And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
125! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks. Yeah, it's jumping up and down like it's supposed to. You know the drill. We've got a very special NSF Live, a little bit of a different time. We scheduled this specifically because we've got folks with other schedules we're working with here today. We are doing a very special live taping. There's no tape involved really, except for the tape that holds up some of my lights in my studio. But we are doing a live recording of an episode of Two Funny Astronauts. But it's not Two Funny Astronauts today. It's actually scratched out, you can see. And it's Three Funny Astronauts. So you are watching this live on the NSF channel, NASASpaceflight.com, here on YouTube. But the show's not going to be about me today. The show is going to be about these nerds over. I can call them nerds. I didn't actually ask them. Usually I ask them, like, are you okay with that before I say it? But, well, the cat's out of the bag, the horse is out of the barn, whatever you want to say. Let's hop over this way and see all of the folks who will be here on Two Funny Astronauts / Three Funny Astronauts today. Mike, Scott, and Garrett, how are y'all doing?
Hey, Das, how you doing?
Good. Hey.
Oh. So y'all are going to be doing your podcast. Two Funny Astronauts is your normal podcast, right? We're going to be recording 2 different episodes today, right? I think we're doing 2 for 2 hours almost.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're going to do a little bit of an intro. Y'all know when it starts. Like, it won't be questionable when the show starts here. And I will toss it to y'all. Y'all hang out with Scott. Do your whole intro. Like, introduce him to them. Y'all know. Folks watching right now know who Scott Kelly is. These other 2 guys I don't know, but Scott, they know who Scott is. But I'll let you all do the introductions just as if that was the start of the podcast, and we will go from there. Any questions? Anything in the meantime?
Nope.
I think we're good.
Good.
All right. Well, I almost just unmuted your mic while we were waiting for the show to start because y'all were already being funny before the show even started, but you know, we try not to do that. We try to go live when it's time to go live. So, folks, hey, today we aren't going to be reading as many live questions. If I see something that's just like off the wall hilarious, I might share it with the guys. But I'm not going to be going through the entire question queue. Also, things like super chats and stuff like that that help us make productions like this happen, I'm not going to be reading those. The show is all about our special guest today. Or I guess their show and their special guest. It's weird. It's like very meta the way that this is layered together. But Mike, Scott, and Kelly. Mike, Scott, and Kelly. Mike, Scott, and Garrett, actually. Y'all ready to start this?
Oh, we're ready.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
All right. Let's get this set up like that, and let's roll the intro. Here you go. And y'all do the intro. I'm not going to talk after this.
Okay. Yay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Funny Astronauts. I'm one of them, Garrett, and we have...
I'm Mike, the other, but today we're very fortunate to have our good friend and a very funny third funny astronaut here. So today we're 3 funny astronauts, our good friend Scott Kelly.
Jury's out on that. We'll see.
Well,
Are you being a good friend or are you being funny?
I don't know. Maybe at the end of the show, you either call the show. You have 3 options. It could be called 3 Funny Astronauts from now on, or maybe it just goes to 1 funny astronaut, depending on how you 2 guys do.
So I'm thinking, Mass. I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm not sure if we're unique enough. A lot of these podcasts, they have a niche, right? They really dive down into a little tiny topic. And I know Two Funny Astronauts is pretty unusual, but I don't think it's unique enough. I think we should be 3 funny astronauts from the tri-state area.
Yes, that's
How
a
about
great
that?
idea.
We can do a whole season like that
From New York and New Jersey
in Connecticut, I guess.
and Connecticut, but we got no one from Connecticut right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any astronauts from Connecticut, are there?
I'm sure. It's Rick Mastracchio.
He's from
Mastracchio-
Connecticut?
Yeah, he's from
Yeah,
where's
he's
he
from
from?
like Hartford, maybe.
something like that, and also Burbank.
Oh
I-
man.
I flew in space with Mastracchio. I should know where he's from, but I'm really not positive.
Yeah, he's from Connecticut, and so is Burbank. I think they both went to college in Connecticut as well. And there's probably a lot of others.
Well, Burbank's kind of funny.
Dan, he's a good guy. Dan,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So we could go with that. That'd be
So-
fun.
yeah.
So
But
how
we're-
does this show work? Like, having never been on this, I have, or
Yeah.
haven't watched it either.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what we try to do, Scott, is in this case, particularly with you here, is try to let the listeners, and in this case, maybe the viewers, if they're watching over YouTube, get a chance to know about what you've done. If there's some funny stuff in there, that's great. But mainly, just get a chance to talk about some of your experiences, which are quite extraordinary, and for us just to have a conversation. And that's the way I would say we could just start that off. Garrett, do you want to add anything to that, or
No.
anything?
We can
else?
start by talking about, we both grew up in New Jersey, as we kind of just alluded to.
Yeah.
In fact, not too far away from each other. In fact, I get mistaken, by the way, a lot for you and your brother. Because they see a short, bald astronaut from New Jersey, and they oh yeah, you're one of the Kellys, and I'm like, no, I'm my own thing, but they don't get that because you guys are a lot more famous than I am. So
You might want to run with that, Garrett.
Yeah, sometimes
because of my last name, I should get confused with Mastracchio. We mentioned Rick Mastracchio. And Rick Mastracchio is a very accomplished, good astronaut, and I did the best I could, but I would get credit a lot of times for stuff that he did. Like I remember someone came up to me, one of the guys at Ellington, he said, "Hey, great job on the STA software." And this is when we were new astronauts. I didn't even know what the STA was at the time, and I just went with it. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much. He would get
sometimes I do
my complaints and bills, but I would get compliments. You might want to go with it.
Better for people to confuse you being him than the other way around, I think, because
absolutely, that's what you should go with.
He's such a smart and talented guy.
He's very smart. Yeah, that's
right.
true.
So that's what you want to go with, I think.
Sometimes I do.
Spent a year in space.
When they mistake me for one, they think I'm one of the Kellys. Because we should. For those who don't know, Scott's got a twin brother, Mark Kelly, who was actually my commander on Discovery. Brought me home from my long duration mission, and is now a U.S. senator. So sometimes I do just go with it when I get mistaken for one of these guys. Like the other day, I walked right into the Senate cloakroom, and it was great. They just let me right in. Oh, come on, Senator Kelly, welcome. And I got the free lunch. It was great.
I go on the floor of the Senate. I go on the floor of the Senate occasionally and vote, but no one knows.
So tell us. There must have been many times, right? You had many opportunities in school, at NASA, and now to trade places, right? And pretend you're your brother. Do you got any? What's the best time you ever did that?
To be honest with you, we were always asked growing up, "Hey, you ever going to do this? Why don't you do this? Change places on your teachers." Never quite interested us at all. Once we left, got out of high school and graduated from college, obviously that's not something you would ever really think about doing again, right? And then in 1996, along with Massimino, Mike Massimino, and 42 other people, 41 other people, math in public.
Good math.
And the three of us, there were 44 of us in that astronaut class. And then this whole idea, because now we're in the same class again, of like switching places. And people would, I got to NASA when I was in my late 30s. So that kind of came up again as a topic. Never interested us again until we were supposed to both be in space together at the same time on my last flight, my year-long mission. Unfortunately, eventually my brother's shuttle flight got delayed out of my time there, so it never happened. But we had this great plan that right before they closed the hatch, he was going to shave off his mustache. I was going to put on a fake mustache. We were going to change clothes, and we were going to make it appear that I went into the space shuttle and he stayed on the space station. And we had it all planned out, and it would have been the best
That
of twins, not actually changing places, but making it appear like we did, and seeing how the ground would have responded to that.
Is that why Mark had the mustache? I had heard like Mark, M for mustache, M for Mark.
Nah, he had the mustache. We both had mustaches, but after they kind of went out of style in like late 90s, early 2000s, I shaved mine off, which meant he had to keep his for like the next 10 years because he couldn't look like he was following my lead, right?
Well, I never mixed you guys up, Scott, except for one time, which you probably don't remember. I interviewed with Mark and we became friends and stayed in touch over email while we were waiting to get the word from NASA. And so then when we both got in, I was, of course, very excited to meet everybody. And you were getting something to drink out of a cooler I think we were at Pat Forrester's house. So our class, as Scott said, had 44 people in it. And we all got together the Sunday evening before we were going to report to work at Pat Forrester's house. And I went to the backyard to get a beer out of the cooler. And Scott's there, and I mistook him for Mark. And I'm like, "Hey, Mark, it's great to see you." And he looks at me and he goes, No, I'm Scott. And I was like, "Oh, man."
Hey, that wasn't when your son pushed my daughter into that trash can.
No, that was it. So that was our first night, and kids weren't involved. Yeah, tell about that one, Scott.
I don't know. I was just standing there, and your son pushes my 6 or 7 year old daughter into this trash can, and she goes flying along across the floor.
They were younger. I think it was our first. I know they were really young. I think it was our first Christmas at Ellington where Santa Claus comes.
Yeah.
They did that. Santa Claus would show up in the airplane.
Yeah.
And so Daniel was probably 1.5, and I think Samantha was probably maybe around that age, almost the exact same age. And Daniel, I don't think he did anything on purpose, but he certainly got in trouble. He knocked Samantha and made her cry, and it was terrible. Yeah, it was horrific.
Hey, but talking about like switching places, made me think about how NASA handles practical jokes, and not always too well.
No,
depends, right?
Are you thinking about the gorilla? Is that where you're going?
Gorilla suit.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Yeah, tell that story. That's great.
So I'm on the space station for, I don't know, it must have been I launched in March of 2015, was going to be there a whole year. Wound up being almost a year in space. And it was the summer of 2015, and my brother says, "Hey," I'm talking to him on the phone one day from the space station. He says, "Hey, I'm sending you a gorilla suit." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm sending you a gorilla suit, and it's part of your like crew care package." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "There's never been a gorilla in space before." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever. I had to get to work." So it was already on the rocket, SpaceX rocket, and watching the launch a few days later, rocket blows up. I'm like, okay, lost, $100 million of hardware, probably more. Garrett, you probably know exactly.
I just want to point out that wasn't my fault.
Okay.
Yeah. Garrett, by the way, was working for SpaceX.
I think it was my brother's. I think it was my brother's fault. The gorilla suit put it over the
It might have been.
Probably a little overweight.
I remember seeing that in the fault tree analysis. There was a gorilla. Oh, there we go. There we got some video of it. Look at that.
So the gorilla suit blows up, and I talked to my brother a couple days later, and first thing he says to me, he goes, "I'm sending you another gorilla suit." And I'm like, okay. So I don't know, 6 months later, a new gorilla suit shows up. I'm getting towards the end of my flight, and he's like, "When are you putting the gorilla suit on?" And I'm like, I don't even know where this freaking thing is. So finally I find it, and it's like towards the end of the mission, I'm like, he keeps hounding me about it. Gorilla suit, gorilla suit. We actually had Chuck Lorre involved.
Oh.
He was all in. Like we were emailing, from,
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory.
And a creator of many shows. He's like the most successful television creator in the world.
So we're having this 3-person email thing about what to do with the gorilla suit. And I said, how about me in the gorilla suit using the toilet on the space station? Because people are interested in that. And you know what he says? Chuck says, he goes, "I'm out."
Really?
One little bathroom humor idea, and he quit on us. He
Wow.
left. Never heard from him again. So I'm like, then I'm stuck in the gorilla suit. The first thing I do is I put it on and I float down to the Russian segment. They didn't even know I had a gorilla suit. And I've never seen two Russians laugh so hard in my entire life. Maybe there was three of them down there at the time. Then I hid in Tim Coper's crew quarters with it, which he didn't even know there was a gorilla suit on board. And he went to open up his door and I busted out on him. And immediately I thought he could have a heart attack right now. And I would be responsible for his manslaughter, I guess. But then I got the great Tim Copra to join me and film that video, which was really just for internal use, right? It was just for our fun. We film it, me chasing him around the space station. I send it to my brother, and then we have it. Rob Navius, the voice of NASA for Mission Control in Houston, there, he narrates it because he thought it was kind of a fun thing too. And then a couple of days later, U.S. Senator Mark Kelly sends it to NBC News. and the very next morning, I get an email from the chief of the astronaut office, Chris Cassidy, and he says, "Hey, give me a call today when you get a moment." I'm like, oh, crap.
That's never good. That's never good.
So I call Cassidy, and he says to me, he goes, "Hey, I saw that gorilla suit video." And I'm like, "Yeah?" He goes, "What else is going on up there? How you doing? Need anything?" Meaning that I think his boss told him to talk to me about the gorilla suit video, which he then did. And so he could say, "Yeah, I talked to him about it." I never heard another word.
Chris is a good guy. That's well played by Chris. Yeah, well done.
Whatever happened to that gorilla suit? Is it still around? Or did you guys
I actually made some other gorilla videos that I'm still waiting for the appropriate moment for them.
I was gonna bring that up, but
what better than now?
I came over your house last, I guess about a year ago, Scott, and we had we had a few beverages, and then you showed me those videos, and I was on the floor, crying my eyes out, laughing like crazy. Those were so funny. Yeah. You got to do something with those. Those are amazing.
Yeah, I will at some point. I just got to find the right cultural moment to read.
How about right now?
Well, I can't. I don't have much time. Take a few minutes.
Can you describe them at all, or is it not even?
Yeah, one of them's about me sleeping in space and talk about, the sleeping bag. But then I say, well, I generally don't sleep in a sleeping bag. Generally, I sleep like naked under a stump. So I like to just float around in my crew quarters. And then there's videos of me, looking out at the Earth and wishing I was, in my home and talking about missing, stereotypical like gorilla stuff like bananas, but in reality, I don't eat bananas. It's a bad stereotype.
It's really funny because the clip that went viral, the one that Das just played, is like excellent physical humor, but the videos that you showed me was just like really clever because it's like this sad gorilla astronaut.
Yeah.
And it's just you made this character that's like really funny. It's very, very well done.
I'll work on that. I'll resurrect Space Gorilla soon. Maybe I'll wait until the election.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's something that a lot of people would enjoy, and you do want to wait for the right time to show it. Yeah. I bet if you write to Chuck Lorre now, he'll be interested.
Maybe.
What do you think of that? Yeah.
My brother needs to do that. He knows him. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a guy. I could get to him too. He's a nice guy. But I would let Mark do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let Mark do it. Well, cool. So that was any other shenanigans you want to share with us on your year? Because you're up there for a long time, man. You had to keep things moving. What else was?
Yeah.
What else did you do to? I mean, a long time. That was. And now we've had other people around the same amount of time since, but you were the first one leading the charge, the first American to do that. What else was going on up there? What else were you doing?
Garrett, how long was your long duration flight?
Oh man, see now you're gonna make me feel bad because I usually brag to people I was up there for 95 days, and that's chump change. In fact, I'm kind of bummed out because you know what happens at 100 days, right? You get that 100-day patch and everybody, and your brother Mark comes up. I'm on day 95, and he's like, Garrett, it's time to go home. Hop in Discovery. And I'm like, no way, man. I'm staying up here for 5 more days and get that patch. And he wouldn't let me. He was like, no, that's flight
right.
plan says you got to get in.
That's right. We have a patch on our suits.
Mm-hmm. Some of us do.
I have 4 of those.
Well, how about let me borrow one? Well, yeah.
Actually, 5. I have like 500 and something days. But anyway,
you know what
I'll
you should
give you
do?
one.
Yeah, you go. Garrett, you know
is.
what you should do is get a 95 a day patch made special.
Well, Mark, actually, at the welcome home ceremony for 124, Mark had to make a little 100 days patch just like that with a little asterisk on it, and then underneath it said almost.
That's like,
that's perfect.
That's like a quarter. That's like a quarter of a year in space.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a quarter of a year is? It's a quarter of a job.
It's a quarter of a job.
Yeah, because half a year, right? Half a year, quarter of a year. You really got to go a year, I think. Yeah. Which I didn't do. Only 2 Americans have done that so far. Frank Rubio, the longest, and then Mark Vandenberg. And I'll tell you what, and this is not a joke. Frank Rubio, I mean, that guy, he went up there thinking he was going to be there for about 4 months on his first flight and wind up staying over a year. That's hard. What I did, spending 6 months and then a year, or almost as much as time as he did, that's a lot easier because I knew what I was getting into. I knew what to expect. I knew how to manage, like right from the very beginning, to manage my fatigue level, my motivation, my, handle my, mental health up there as best I could over that long period of time. But he didn't have the opportunity to prepare for that. So his mission, I think, is really, really unique in the history of spaceflight.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you did, Scott, knowing you were getting yourself into a year up there? What were some of the things you did to prepare or have ready to keep you going?
Just stuff like making sure I had a plan for what I wanted to do in my spare time, making sure I had all the stuff that I felt like I didn't have that I might need, that I didn't have on my first long flight and might need on the second. But I think the biggest thing was just kind of a mindset that part of my mission is being there for a long time. So as the days passed, I looked at it as almost like a merit badge versus a slog. So I had more motivation at the end of that year-long flight that I did at the end of the 6-month flight, more motivation and energy, just because the duration was part of the mission. When it's not part of the mission, then, after the first, few months, if things aren't going to, what's the difference between month 4 and month 6? If you're kind of doing the same work, not really much of anything, unless part of your mission objective is to be there for a long time. And that's how I feel.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, you learned a lot. We were talking about your brother Mark. You guys did that twin study while you were up there. Was that how did that come about? Was that something that who came up? How did that happen?
So there's a lot of misinformation about where that came from. Was it NASA? Was it me? It was kind of a combination of both. What happened was, when my brother and I, when we became, because we're in the same class in 1996, we got there, I never had any expectation either way whether NASA would try to do any kind of comparative study between Mark and I, because as science informed people know, when you have an experiment, you need a large sample group to make it statistically significant. And a sample of one, kind of in a vacuum, is not statistically significant. But this turned out to be like a longitudinal study, which you can make arguments that you have comparative data in that case. But what happened was, when I was assigned to the flight and we were getting briefed up for the public announcement of the crew, me and Misha Kornienko, the Russian guy, I just asked a question. I said, hey, if the science people were briefing us on the science, and I said, hey, if someone asks about any kind of comparative studies between my brother and I being identical twins, is that something anyone is considering? I would have never asked that on a 6-month flight because the year was just kind of so unique in NASA's history. I thought, well, maybe someone would be interested. And the science folks at NASA says, no, we have no plans for that. And I was like, okay, whatever. I was just trying to get, help for the press conference on the announcement. And then a couple of weeks later, they came back to me and they said, we started talking about that idea, that question you asked. And then we reached out to universities around the country if they thought they could get any valuable data and science from, two identical twins that, one spent nearly a year in space and the other, spent much, much less time in space, like 50 days compared to 500.
Mm-hmm. Not that you lord that over him or anything, right? You never rub that in, do you?
That's why he ran for this. This right here is why he ran to be a U.S. senator, right? But yeah, so they came back and they said, "Oh yeah, people are really interested in doing this." And they had years of data on my brother, so they had great stuff from him already. And it's still an ongoing study that has had pretty interesting results, actually. Some of which are contrary to what they expected.
What did they find? So that's the way it happened. What did they find out? Because I've heard different versions of that too. What in the end? What has been shown and what has been learned from all that?
So first of all, people ask me about the science on this all the time, and I always tell them I'm not a scientist. This was not my science. Some of the science was just on my blood. I don't even know what they're doing with it, or other bodily samples that we take up there. But some of the interesting results was like my gene expression as compared to his. As a result of the environment, they could say 7% of that changed. And our genes are DNA, RNA, protein. Expression is like whether they're turned on and off. 7% of mine had changed. My telomeres, which are the ends of our chromosomes, they get shorter, more frayed as we get old. They actually got better on me in space in this harsh environment. The hypothesis was they would get worse. Initially, NASA thought that this was due to exercise and diet we were on that helped my telomeres. But after I got home, they realized that about 6 months later that the Japanese had a telomeres experiments on these little worms on board, and their telomeres got better too. And I never once saw those guys working out on any of the exercise equipment or anything. But it turns out like some radiation is good for your telomeres. That's what they learned.
Wow.
It might be bad for something else. Hopefully I'll never find out that part, but
yeah.
So
we should, by the way, we should set the record straight because there's a lot of misconception out there because the media made a big deal about that you have a different, your DNA changed, right? So they made it sound like you had a whole new set of DNA, like you became a mutant with some kind of mutant powers, like you get telekinesis or like laser beams shooting out of your eyes or something.
Magneto.
He had that stuff. Scott had that stuff before he flew in space.
Yeah, right. That was just from growing up in New Jersey. Yeah. But the thing is that none of that's true, right? It's just the expression of the genes, right?
Yeah, all of our gene expression changes all the time, but I think they were able to kind of isolate it to not all of it, but we have changes in gene expression due to our environment. People do on Earth.
Yeah,
they were able to kind of somewhat correlate this to spaceflight. I think, again, I'm not the expert, but I think the most significant result of that twin study is that after I spent a year in space, I am now, well, certainly more handsome, but smarter than my twin brother, Mark, as evidenced by the fact that he's now a U.S. senator.
I would add this. I would say happier too.
Probably,
yes.
Right?
When I saw you, we were at your birthday party, and thanks again, both Garrett and I got to go. It was really wonderful. You guys had a joint birthday party. It was great to be there. And I don't know, what Mark was saying. He just had a rough week in Congress, and in your, so it seems like maybe there was some personality shift there too. Yeah. Maybe you got happier, and he's whatever. He's not as happy as he was. Maybe
he calls me every. He calls me
have to change.
Oh, go ahead, Garrett. Go ahead.
You might have to change call signs, right? Because you're grumpy,
yeah,
right? And I think
no
maybe
one knows
Mark,
what he is. It's a big secret. But yeah, but my brother is a U.S. senator, right? He loves a lot of the job, and he's doing a really outstanding job. It's really, really tough, hard work. He says sometimes it's like not even high school. It's like middle school in there.
Yeah. Well, he is doing a great job. I'm very grateful.
He's making us proud. So thank you, Mark. Well done.
I'm sure he's not listening.
He's too busy. He better not be listening.
He's still upset about he's still upset with the
yeah. Well, some of that stuff with the twin study I'd heard too, that some of the changes that they noticed were changes that they would notice in other high risk or high exploration exercises, people climbing mountains and things like that. Is that what you found as well? Is that true? I heard that somewhere. Is that correct?
I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. You're not a scientist either.
No, I'm an engineer. No, we're all engineers here.
Yeah, engineer.
Yeah. Have you heard of this guy, Chris Mason? Have you ever heard of him, Scott?
Yeah, I know Chris.
Yeah, in New York. I'm going to have dinner with him on this weekend on Saturday. But he spoke to my students about some of the stuff that you went through. He seems like
he's
a good guy.
He's one of the big twin study researchers.
Yeah. And he came and spoke over at Columbia.
I think I'm going to see him I think he's going to be at the Explorers Club dinner in a couple weeks.
You going to be there?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Oh, awesome. Okay, good.
It'll be my first time. Is it worth it?
Too late. You already got your ticket.
Yeah.
No, it absolutely. I think this one is worth it because it's a space related one. They're doing a space theme, and so for that, especially for us, it's kind of fun because there'll be more former astronauts and people from NASA we get to see, and it's always fun. It's the whole weekend is kind of fun if you're able to go to some of the activities they have on Saturday. But I think it's supposed to do something. I think talking to Peggy, and they're going to talk about Axiom and some of the other things that are going on.
Peggy Whitson will be there?
I think so. Yeah, that's why I think she's planning to be there.
Are you a member?
I am. Are you a member?
No one ever asked me.
Oh, you can get in easy.
Are you supposed to be invited, or are you supposed to?
No, you just got to be. If you want in, you're in. I just need. I can sponsor you, or anybody in the club can.
Are you got to pay though, right? Isn't there like you got to pay dues or something?
There are dues. However, the dues that if you pay that you're in New York, because I'm a New Yorker, are higher than if you're not in New York. Oh. And the higher level of membership that you are, the lower the dues.
Uh-huh.
And so I think with your accomplishments, Scott, you'd be a pretty high level of membership.
Like platinum level? Do you get to go into the room?
It's called a fellow. Like you're it's not a frequent flyer program. But if it was, Scott has a lot of frequent flyer miles in space.
He does have a lot of miles.
But it's
I thought maybe you get to go into the room first before everybody else. If you're platinum level.
You're certainly first up at the dinner. You get to go to the buffet table first.
You get to go to the buffet table.
Do that.
Is there a level where instead of paying dues that they pay you?
Ooh.
I don't think they've got. I don't know about that, but if there was, you'd be in.
Work on that for me, and then
I'll see what I can do, but I wouldn't count on it. But it's well worth it. I think you'll enjoy your time there. Well, you should go by the club itself. The club is extraordinary. It's got amazing. Have you been to the club? Have you ever? I know you haven't been to the dinner, but the club is pretty amazing. It's got really interesting displays and a lot of history, and it's a fun place to go and hang around. And
I'm a member of that Circumnavigators Club.
Oh, I don't know about that. Where's that?
I'm a member of that club too, just on the account of the fact that I'm Jewish.
Not so. Oh, that's pretty good. We didn't script that out, folks. He came up with that on his own.
I'm not Jewish, but no comment.
That's a different club. Where's the Circumnavigator Club? Is that in New York as well?
I think it is. Yeah, but you can do that. Like I think if you circumnavigate the globe on like United Airlines or Delta Airlines, you can become a member too. So.
Oh, cool. That's probably a pretty low level of membership, though. I think. Yeah. All right. But anyway, so yeah, we'll see you at the Explorers Club.
Definitely.
It's cool.
So speaking of stuff like that, I was on this boat last week for this eclipse, and this astronomer was there. He had been to both poles, the North and the South Pole.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asserting that maybe there's fewer people that have done that have gone into space. Do you think that's true?
Both, probably.
Yeah, he'd been to the South Pole and the North Pole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, probably. Yeah, because North Pole's kind of hard, especially now since it's melted most of the time, right? You just got to go on a boat.
Yeah, he went on some Russian icebreaker and got up there. Yeah, I don't know.
So
everyone's got to give it.
I am going to Antarctica though on a cruise ship in December over Christmas with William Shatner and a bunch of other people.
Yeah. Wow, tell us, what's this about?
It's on a seaborne ship. It's a private charter where people can come along with the great William Shatner, fellow space traveler.
Yep.
Former Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk.
Yeah, and we're gonna go with a bunch of guests and get to go to Elephant Island where Shackleton.
Oh, nice.
For a while.
Oh, yeah. So these guys were on the same cruise I was talking about. They went to Elephant Island, and apparently what you can do is you can like hike in, and then hike down to like the final approach to the whaling station that like reenacts Shackleton's when he first got back and to some semblance of civilization. Yeah. And you walk down there and you see the whaling station, and you're like imagining what Shackleton must have felt like after going 1,300 kilometers in an open boat across the ocean.
Yeah. That's a different island. That's South Georgia, but we're not going to go there.
Oh, right. Elephant Island's where he left.
Where he got stuck.
Yeah. Okay. No, sorry.
And
for your viewers that aren't familiar,
explain.
This guy Ernest Shackleton in his ship Endurance, which I named my book Endurance a little bit in honor of him because he was a hero of mine. But he took like 28 people from England. They were going to go to the south, traverse this Antarctic continent, and they left in like September. In January, they got stuck in the ice. A couple months later, their ship broke up.
Yep.
Lived on the ice for like a year. This is in the early, like 1903 or 4 or something, early part of the last century. They drifted around for a while, and they figured they're going to die here. So they had to get off this ice sheet. They hiked for months with their dogs pulling their sleds. Eventually, they get to the edge of the ice. They go like, I don't know, it was like 7 days in the open lifeboats to South Georgia, spend like a month there.
Elephant Island.
Oh, I'm sorry, Elephant Island. And eventually Shackleton realized, hey, we're going to die here. So a few of them had to go like 800 miles, like Garrett said, to South Georgia Island, only navigating with the stars, get to South Georgia. The 5 guys left a bunch of people on Elephant Island. They traverse South Georgia in the worst conditions that no one has ever done before, 3 of them. They go back, get the other 2 guys, and then Shackleton spends like 2 months trying to get through the ice and weather to pick up the rest of his crew. Over 2 years from the time they left, they were like marooned for like over a year and a half. And the crazy thing about this is nobody died.
Nobody died. Yeah. It's amazing.
How is this possible? Yeah. Every time I go on a cruise, somebody dies. They just put them
beware travelers to the
well, you know that all you can eat buffet on Royal Caribbean. I mean that'll kill you. You wolf down all those spare ribs, and you're gonna get a massive coronary. I mean it's just guaranteed.
All right. So wait, you talking about cruises with the Navy, or are you talking about like fun cruises?
Regular. I've been on several cruises where somebody has died.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
don't ask where they put them.
They on the ship last week, in the middle, the alarm goes off in the middle of the night, and I hear a stretcher crew to deck 7 forward, stretcher crew. I'm like, yeah. And then the next day we're delayed because an ambulance is coming to take somebody off. This happens all the time.
Yeah, very common,
man.
That's why
I gotta say the average age on this cruise I was on was a little high.
Yeah, that's part of it, obviously.
In fact, there were a lot of walkers and scooters on this thing, and I was like, man, if we hit an iceberg, forget about it.
Yeah, I was just going for the jokes, not reality. I know.
That's pretty good. Yeah. So you mentioned, Scott, your book and naming it Endurance in honor in somewhat of Well, of course, your experiences, but also Shackleton. And it made me think of another book that both inspired both of us, but it really had an effect on you in your pursuit of what you did with your career and your life, which is the right stuff. Am I remembering that correctly?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was really a pivotal moment when I picked up that book. I went from underachieving kid at 18 years old, picking that book up, reading it in the course of a few days, and just finding my life path in Tom Wolfe's incredible words. When I finished reading it, I say, and I think to myself, okay, now I have a recipe for how to, improve my situation. I'm going to go into the Navy and fly fighter planes, become a test pilot, become an astronaut. It was all right there. Step one of my new plan, finish reading this book. Step two, find the right stuff, which is actually kind of hard to find because it's really not clear what it is.
Yeah.
But I worked hard at it, and I truly believe had Tom not written that book, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you guys today.
Really? What was it about? Was there something in particular about it, or maybe a passage in it, or just what was it that hit you that all of a sudden the light bulb went on or something? It changed your life?
Yeah, there was, in the beginning of the book, it starts off with this very, Tom wrote in this, and you met him before.
I met him through you, actually, which is something I'll be always grateful for, because that changed my life as well. I saw the movie first, and then I read the book. The movie came out in I think in 1983, the end of 83, and I saw it probably early 84, and that changed my life. It got, I didn't have the delusion I was going to be able to become a fighter pilot. I knew I wasn't cut out for that, but it got me interested again in the space program and just that culture and doing something with purpose. And so I saw the movie, read the book, and I talk about it all the time. Almost every talk I give, how that changed my life. And I was lucky to meet Tom through you when you came after your flight to the Intrepid. You invited him to when you got an award from the Intrepid, and I got to meet him there, which was very special. But you were talking about Tom the way he is in the way he writes.
I remember though, for 1 second, remember that cane he had with the wolf?
Yeah, with the wolf on it. Yeah,
that was the coolest thing. But anyway,
he was wearing a white suit. Yeah,
white suit
with a hat.
White hat.
Yeah, he's cool. He was.
But cool. I think it was how he invented that like genre of creative nonfiction where you're writing in a fictional way of a real account of people, but you're writing it as it kind of appears like fiction. So it's much more visual, and I don't know, it just really caught my attention. But I remember in the first chapter, there was one part where they were talking about this guy just crashing in Florida and crashing the airplane and getting killed. And I was like, man, this is exciting. I want to do this. I mean, not
killed in an airplane crash.
Getting close to getting killed and not getting killed.
Right. That's
somehow
the key
that
part.
interested me, which is I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with your brain. I don't know.
I remember when we were first selected, and we were brand new rookie astronauts in my class. I was the class right after you guys. So we were class of '98. 2 years.
How could we forget? You showed up.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, ruined the day. But I think it was the final game at the Astrodome. They were shutting that thing down, and like Neil Armstrong threw out the first pitch. Yeah. But we all got to go, and we got to stand on like the base paths, and watch this happen. And I'm standing there next to Ken Ham, and we're getting this roar. We're introduced. We get this roar from the crowd, and he's saying this is just like that end scene in The Right Stuff, where like the guys that go on to become astronauts are all being feted and like are in a ticker tape parade and all this going on and treated really. And then meanwhile, Chuck Yeager's back there flying at F-104 and getting into a flat spin and doing the real work. And now we're just like a bunch of prima donnas. And he was like, yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah. Well, Garrett, you see that picture of yourself from back then?
Yeah. Yeah, I missed that little bit of hair. I said a little bit.
Very stylish.
I should have given up on my hair a lot earlier than I did.
Yeah.
You try to hang on for a while until you realize you look like a clown.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about Tom Wolfe, and the right stuff that made a big difference in your life. And then,
Yeah, huge. Yeah, I call that.
Didn't your father also like have a little heart to heart with you at one point?
Oh yeah, well, sort of. This is funny. So yeah, my brother and I, people think our paths were very similar getting into at NASA, right? Because we were both, test pilots and I was a fighter pilot, he was an attack pilot. He flew A6s, I flew the Tomcat, much better airplane, harder to fly, cooler looking than the double ugly, I think we called the A6 intruders in the Navy. But in any case, people thought our paths were like exactly the same, but they weren't. Because when we were growing up, we both were like, I'm surprised I never got held back because I wouldn't do anything, like no work. I remember like the third grade seeing a list of all the work I didn't do. And basically it was everything we were supposed to do that year that I had to finish on the last day. And the teacher's like, you didn't do anything. And I'm like, I know, I can't. It's not possible. Figuring I'm gonna like be kept back, but I don't know. Maybe my dad like twisted her arm or something. But in any case,
as an 8-year-old,
we're like in the 9th grade. I'll keep this brief. We're in the 9th grade. Our dad sits us both down. We're getting ready to go into high school. Maybe we're in 8th grade. I don't know. High school there. Yeah, we had middle school, so it was like 7th through 9th. We're getting ready to go in 10th grade. My dad says, "Hey, you guys both are crappy students. I'm going to start thinking about vocational education for you." Well, actually, let me back up. I said to my brother a few years ago, I was like, "Hey, whatever happened there in the 10th grade? We both sucked, and then all of a sudden you're a straight A student." He goes, "You don't remember Dad sitting us down right before high school and saying how we both suck and we're going to go to like vocational school and become mechanics or something?" I was like, no, I don't remember that at all. Only because there was probably a squirrel running outside the window. Had it not been for that squirrel, I'm sure I would have went to Columbia and Caltech with you guys. Damn squirrel.
Yep. It's all that squirrel's fault.
Yeah,
so that's what happened.
Completely different trajectory until I read the book, The Right Stuff. And then I caught up and surpassed him for a while. And then he became a U.S. Senator. So,
yeah. Well, boy, that must have been a good talk that your dad had, at least for Mark's sake. And
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You missed it entirely.
What's the story with the time here, Doss? Are we what's going on? Are we taking a break or stopping, or what's happening?
We've got just a couple minutes. We're coming up on about 45 minutes. So whenever y'all naturally want to take a little bit of a break, we can do that. That's up to y'all.
All right. I think this is a good spot.
Yeah.
So why don't we take a little break and we'll come back and record part 2.
All right.
All right. Good deal. I will let y'all hop off, and I will keep everybody comfortable. I don't know about that. Company was what I meant to say. While y'all hop off real quick.
How long? 5?
5 minutes.
5 minutes or so, yeah. Yeah, we're flexible.
All right, 55.
Okay.
All right, good deal. Mics are going to stay hot, by the way, just so you know. Don't come back
What?
and be like, what? Are we here or not?
I'm turning up.
I'm muting mine right now.
I
got it. Yeah, man. We got it.
Mute on your end.
Dangerous.
All right. Oh, hey, there's a background image. Folks, if you're watching this, now this part's going to get like cut out, right? Because we're a podcast and we're going to snip it and blah, blah, blah. If you're watching, we're trying something new on the NSF channel. We're doing like a live taping. Like I said, no tape is actually involved, of the Too Funny Astronaut podcast. So Mike and Garrett do this did previously a couple years ago, the Too Funny Astronauts podcast, right? And then you get busy, you don't do it, et cetera, et cetera. It takes time to make a podcast. So we here at NSF have offered to help them make their podcast happen every month. So we're going to go, and once a month we'll have a special NSF Live. We call it NSF Live because it's like a talk show sort of thing. That's usually what those are, right? And we're going to record it for them, and we'll share it with you live. So if you want to see it live without anything being cut out, you can join here on the channel. You can watch this on the channel here. Join us here when we do these things, right? And then we're going to take that, and we're going to cut it into 2 episodes of their podcast, right? So we'll snip off the beginning, and we'll snip off the other end, and then we'll put it up. And they actually have podcasts and their own YouTube channel. So I'm going to put these links in chat for you. Make sure, there's a couple hundred people watching right now, 600-700 people or so. So yes, there is no actual tape being used. So here, I have oh, I actually have. Wait a second. I have some Captan tape. You know, it's like, oh, I'm just going to buy this off Amazon. So I have a roll of actual space tape on my desk that has never actually been used for anything because focus. I could randomly put that on something on my desk if you really need some space tape. But anyways, we're going to cut it up. Let me get y'all a link to their podcast. It's over on, I guess it's like a clearinghouse sort of thing. This PodBean website sends it to all other places. But if you just go to, it's to funnyastronauts.com. There we go. All right, let me put this link in the chat for you. So if you're a podcast person, you want to like listen to podcasts, and you download your podcast on your favorite podcast app or whatever. I don't do a lot of podcasts. Don't tell anybody. But right, there you go. There's the YouTube channel. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Nice. There is their YouTube channel. So hop over there and toss them a follow or sub or whatever on the YouTube channel. And then also here is that's me also, pretending to be Chris B. That's their website, twofunnyastronauts.com, and that redirects you to their podcast clearinghouse, I guess. I don't know what we would really want to call that. But it's a place where if you are a podcast connoisseur, you can click and get little RSS, XML, whatever feeds that come into your app. You can subscribe to it and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. It's like and subscribe or whatever, you know. But we just released on April 3rd an episode that if you watched it here, you may have already seen because we recorded it as part of the Intrepid Museum Astro Live back in January, right? And we took that double feature-length episode and we put that onto their podcast for them. Called it episode 30. I called it episode 30, right? Yeah, back in action. Why am I I could, like, show y'all this right here. PodBean, see? Oh, that's the almost image I found, and then I didn't actually show it. So you can hop over this way, and from here you can click on the things. You can listen to it right on the site. You can subscribe to the podcast, et cetera, et cetera. But this is where the sort of, I don't know if I call it bite-size episodes will be uploaded eventually, right? And then the YouTube channel as well. You can head over there. Yeah, there we go. Chris told me that we already did that. Real quick, hey, Liz McQuaid, thank you for the support there. A little bit of a super chat coming in saying this is so fun. Thanks. It's also cool because it's like a live taping sort of thing. Like we need a YouTube bot that reads chat, and when you put in clapping emotes, it like plays a clapping track or something that they can actually hear. So when they're actually funny, you can provide them audience. I don't know if that would work or not. It's not a technical problem. Let's put it that way. Let's see here. Let me read a couple more super chat things here. So you can say recording because that always works. Punky,
are we
love
back
you.
live?
Well, they can hear your mic, but they can't see you yet.
Okay.
Okay. And we can hop back in whenever y'all are ready. Did everybody sit back down again?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm just telling them how they can. There we go. We'll get your cameras back on. Where they can find the podcast that's actually going to end up going out after we cut it up and release it.
Thanks, Tas. Appreciate the plug there. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's y'all's show. Like, we're just showing people how to find your show. So how do we want to do this? Do you want me to play the intro guitar riff again, and y'all can go into it, or what do y'all want to do?
Yeah, actually, if you do that, then you won't have to edit it later.
All right.
It's less work.
Yeah, and y'all can like start off with, all right, we're back for part 2 of our Scott Kelly, yada, yada, yada. All right, let's make sure y'all can hear it. Prod 1 comes up. And it's going to go from the Too Funny intro back to y'all, and y'all take it away, all right?
Sounds good. Thanks.
And hey, I was trying to bring up stuff, like I was frantically Googling things to try and show and stuff like that.
Oh, that was awesome.
So hopefully,
when you got the gorilla suit video and everything, that was great.
I like the gorilla suit. So if you want me to try and find something, feel free to just say it out loud, like, hey, can you get that? And I'll see how quick I can get it if you need me to get a picture you remember or something. Eclipse photos, whatever it is you want me to show. Just say it out loud, all right? All right, so here we go with the Too Funny intro, and then it'll go right back to y'all. Which scene is that? Hang on a second.
If we're not being that funny, we can ask you to like quick Google and bring up like Tig Navarro.
I won't do that live. I'll do that on the safe monitor, and I'll see what it is. You're trying to Rickroll me or something, and then I'll drag it over if it's something I can show. No. You never know. All right, y'all, here we go. It's going to go back to y'all, but here comes up the Too Funny guitar riff in 3, 2.
Yay! Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to this special edition of three funny astronauts from the tri-state area.
New York and New Jersey, even. You can cut out Connecticut.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Just New York and New Jersey. Yeah. We got our special guest today. This is part two with Scott Kelly. There's Scott right there. And we're just saying, by the way, we should point this out that we're as we usually say, we're not saying that we're actually funny, right,
Yeah.
Mass?
Right. No. We're just funny for astronauts.
From New York and New Jersey.
Yeah. Hold us to that standard.
Maybe for some astronauts. Depends on your humor.
Yeah.
It is a very low bar. We like to point that out. Yeah.
If your sense of humor is more Three Stooges sense of humor, then maybe.
There you go. Right. What we think is funny. We think we're funny.
Coming from Mr. Gorilla Suit over here.
yeah, slapstick stuff.
I got a question for you, Matt. So,
yeah.
And I don't know if Garrett experiences himself, but since Garrett and I have something in common that you don't have in common with the two of us, I'm going to ask you both this question. So occasionally I'll be giving a talk and you meet the people after, and you always get the guy will come up to you, generally, mostly guys, and they'll say, "Oh, I was going to be an astronaut, but I was too tall." Do you ever get that, Mass? Because you're like the tallest.
I get it all the time.
Ever. What do you say? No, you're not.
No, I say no, I'm not. I said the limit was 6'4". Yeah, I know. I thought you had to be short to be an astronaut, but nah.
I usually tell those guys, "No, you're too short," and they're like, "What?"
Yeah, people ask me like, "What's the upper limit? You know, what's the height limit?" And I'm like, I was really much more worried about the lower limit.
Yeah, right. You got to be able to see over the windscreen, over the dashboard of the space shuttle.
Once I was at the NBL. There's the big pool in Houston where we practice our spacewalk. So you get in the big white suit and they pick you up with a crane, they drop you in the water, and you float around and you practice spacewalking. And to get in there, when the crane picks you up, there's this thing called a donning station, right? Which is it's like a little platform that you get on, and it's got your backpack mounted on there. And just higher than my backpack, somebody put a sign there that says, "You must be this tall to ride."
Smart Alex.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people think that because back in the old days, right, back in the 60s, there was before the space shuttle, there was more of a restriction on the height in both directions, short and tall. I had an Apollo guy come up to me one time and said, "Hey, you're kind of tall to be an astronaut." And I said, "Well, our limit was 6'4", my standard answer." I'm looking at this guy, and he's right almost like at eye level. And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, what was your height limit back then?" And he says, 5'11". And I go, how tall are you? He says 6'1". I go, "How'd you handle that?" He goes, "Oh, it wasn't easy." He was a Marine, and he said he went to his flight surgeon and had him put down like 5'13" with a squiggly 3. And then he had bad. He did jumping jacks to compress his spine, and before his interview, whatever, and he bad posture, and he got through. So there's always a way to get around that. So unless you're like, really tall, like over 6, but I don't even know if they have a height restriction anymore. Do they?
So
no, they still do.
The new guys about that. I don't know if they even have that. They don't even have a height restriction anymore.
No, there is. There's a limit.
Okay.
But we've opened it up for Dragon. I think it's like up now to about 6'5", 6'6". We opened it up a little bit on both ends. But there's still a limit.
What is the reason? Do you not fit in the seat?
Yeah, I mean, when we design the seats and the suits and everything, you have to have some upper limit for the engineers to work to. So, but it's it was I can't remember. The requirements were given to us by NASA, and they intentionally opened it up and made it a little bit bigger than it was for shuttle.
Yeah, and the shuttle limit was not based on the shuttle. It was based on the T-38, the airplane that we flew.
Is that right?
Yeah. There was an upper, it had to do with the ejection seat and fitting in the airplane. So there was an upper limit, but there was also a lower limit.
Yeah.
That you couldn't be any lighter. But we actually had issues with Japanese females, and that was the when we put a new ejection seat in the airplane, trying to open up the demographic of people.
Yeah.
The lower limit was the certain, percentage Japanese female to the, upper percentage American male, and try to fit that in. So that's where the limit for shuttle came from the airplane. But then once we started flying the Soyuz, obviously the Soyuz seat, I don't know, I'm 5'7" on a good day, and I barely fit in that Soyuz. So I don't know how, like Paulo Nespoli, who's probably 6'2", they actually had to modify the seat for him to get him to fit. But I don't know how anyone taller than about my height fits in there, because it was brutal.
I think it's a sitting height thing, I think, as well, wasn't it? On the Soyuz, it was your back.
More important, because your legs, bend.
Yeah. Scott Altman had this story where he was his sitting height was too much for the Air Force, but the Navy, they didn't care. Like, oh, we'll take you. See if you can fly. That's all we care about.
That's because he flew that cool airplane, the Tomcat, which was
which I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
So we talked about in our first version, we talked a little bit about your childhood and your brother growing up, and your dad setting you guys straight and setting your brother on a path. And then Tom Wolfe's book when you were a freshman at SUNY Maritime, right below the Throgs Neck Bridge, right?
Bronx, New York, baby.
There you go, right in the Bronx, right, man? So you were a student there, read Tom Wolfe's book, and then decided to become a fighter pilot. And did you think fighter pilot, test pilot, astronaut right away, or what were you thinking when you were in college?
Absolutely. I'm thinking. I mean, it was somewhat of a fantasy, but at least it was a fantasy that had a small chance of happening. Especially when you look at things, progressively. Like, you could never imagine like one of your high school classmates becoming a brain surgeon, right? But you could imagine, that same person that once they're a surgeon becoming a brain surgeon and a doctor becoming. So it's like this iterative process. So hard to imagine 18-year-old kid reads book, decides she's going to become an astronaut, 18 years later flies in space, right? That's my story. But when you're progressively increasing your skills, and once I became a test pilot, then it was much more possible. Never actually thinking it was going to happen. I think that would be actually pretty arrogant considering the odds. But for somehow, I applied once, got picked. My brother applied twice, got picked. My brother applied twice, got picked.
He would have gotten picked first time too if he flew Tomcats, I bet you.
Right? Probably.
Yeah.
Wait, once you got, because you were back then, I guess now they just have one category for this. Then there's an application cycle that's closing now, probably after this thing. Well, we're airing live, but when the podcast comes out, it'll be after that. It's coming, I think, in a couple of days. And
soon.
April.
Good point. But, any of the listeners, you can still apply to be an astronaut, and I'll tell you what, if these two guys did it, so can you.
There you go. There you go.
I think there's only like 4 more days left, though, so you got to hurry up if you're listening to us live.
Yeah. Stop listening.
I filled mine out like a few days before it was due. The guy in my office was working on a stack of papers. Fellow test pilot, I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "That's my astronaut application." And I looked through it, and I'm like, "Holy shit! Oh, really? All that? You want to read that?" I go, "When is this due?" And he goes like, "Tomorrow." In reality, it was like a few days later. I go, "You know what? I'm going to send in an application. One pager, the important stuff."
Yeah, that's good strategy, actually.
Yeah. You know who didn't get picked?
That guy.
The guy with all the paper. It was too much paperwork.
They were like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, and this was in a day where you had to fill out an application. Now you get online and do something, I guess.
It's all electronic
you get
now.
A pen or a typewriter. They don't even have typewriters anymore.
That's true.
10 years ago, I was looking for one when I was still with NASA. They didn't have one on site anywhere. They didn't know it. So this was a different era back. We had it tough back then, kids. But wait a minute. So if it wasn't for this guy, you wouldn't have applied to be in our class? You don't think? Even though this is something you were wanting to do, you didn't realize what was happening?
I was wanting to do it like 10 years later because I didn't have a master's degree. I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of experience.
Yeah.
I felt a guy with a bachelor's degree from SUNY Maritime College that no one's ever heard of outside of the Bronx or the maritime industry would not have a chance. I figured I needed a master's. I was thinking of like going to like Georgia Tech and getting a master's in neuroengineering. A lot of astronauts have done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I got picked, I just had a bachelor's degree in engineering.
Really?
Yeah, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
Interesting. But you gave it a shot.
But you had something going for you, which is that you're from New Jersey. And we all know that the best astronauts all come from New Jersey, right?
And yeah,
I
and
mean,
the
come
Bronx
on.
didn't help.
Wally Schirra,
That's right.
Buzz,
Buzz. That's right.
Lansky,
Ken Ham, and
Lansky,
Mario Ronco.
Mario Ronco's from the Bronx, man.
Oh, but he was a New Jersey State Trooper.
He was a That's right. He was a New Jersey State Trooper.
So I think that should count.
Is that amazing?
Who do you got from Long Island, Mass? Who? We just named a whole bunch of really good ones from Jersey. Who do you got?
Who do we got? We got Jim Weatherby.
Weatherby's from Long Island.
I think Beamer's from out here.
Oh, Beamer's
Weatherby's from Huntington, Long Island.
Beamer. I
What's
figured
that?
he was like from the Midwest for some reason. He seems like
He grew up out further from the city. Maybe that made a difference. Mario, I guess, Bronx, but he also worked as a New York State Trooper. Carol Bobko was from Brooklyn. Can you imagine? He recently passed. You ever meet him?
Oh,
he
yeah.
was a shuttle pilot back at the beginning of the time.
I went to his memorial service recently.
Oh, good man. He was from Brooklyn. But who else? Charlie Camarda was from Queens.
Camarda.
Not too far.
He was one of those what was that thing you guys did? With
the New York crew?
The New York
crew.
We were the New York crew. Right? Yeah, we did. So for the listeners, we used to supply entertainment as the new astronaut class for the Christmas parties. And so there was a crew from Ohio. It was like Kevin Kriegel and Hendricks and Nancy Curry and a few. I think everyone was from Ohio, except Kriegel's from Long Island. But they made him an honorary Ohio guy. Yeah, Kriegel's also from Long Island. So, there's a bunch from New York, right? It's a big state. Anyway, but the New York crew is we based it on the all Ohio crew. They had their patch was in the shape of the Ohio O, from Ohio State and all that. And so what happened? We were kicking around ideas for skits. What happens if you had a crew all from New York? And we had Charlie Camarda, which is as New York as you could get. I mean, he was like his character out of Saturday Night Fever, and now he's an astronaut. It was really he's the only astronaut in the who had cologne in his locker and went for a manicure every once in a while. This was a whole new, and it never really caught on. He's I think still the only one. It wasn't like, oh, everybody, we got to get some cologne in here. It was the only guy. But Charlie is also from the area. We did the New York crew.
And wore these really fancy brief underwear in the locker room. I remember.
Yeah, Charlie was different. He was from the Saturday Night Fever era. He was from
the hair dryer and
he had a hair dryer. No one had a hair dryer.
Hey,
no one had enough hair to have a hair dryer.
Speaking of that, when we changed astronaut gyms, remember we got the new gym? And when I cleaned out my locker in the gym we moved, I found a comb. And I was like, I didn't even have any hair left. I was like, what the hell? When is that?
From the early days.
I think Camarda used to stick them all over the place just in case they ever needed one in an emergency.
Camarda had him everywhere. He also used the box because he grew up like when the Golden Gloves were. He was from a different era, really. He was out there, and he used to use the that speed bag and all that stuff. And Charlie's unbelievable. But anyway, we did the New York crew, our first
with Soichi Noguchi. Which was amazing because this guy's Japanese. His English was really good then, I guess, for a non-native speaker. But the fact that he had comedic timing in a foreign language was just incredible.
Multi-talented. He fit in as a New Yorker. Yeah, absolutely.
He was funny in that. Yeah, he was great.
You talking to me? He kept doing that. He was great. He knows his line. He still does that. I did a couple downlinks with him when he was on the station, his latest mission. And he did that a few times. You talking to him? Yeah, so. Yeah, no, it was great. It was really fun. But getting back to you, Scott, when you're flying in the Navy, and I was going to say, when we applied, when we were talking about get your applications in now, kids, there was two different groups of astronauts, right? We had mission specialists like Garrett and I applied to, and then you had the pilot astronaut. And you went in, of course, as a pilot astronaut and learned to fly the shuttle. But I remember you telling me at one point the way things went is almost like you started doing your career wasn't just being a pilot. It ended up being things that mission specialists traditionally would do, like the long duration flights and the spacewalks and the robotics. And tell us a little bit about that once you got to NASA and the way things progressed to get you eventually on that year-long mission.
Yeah, that's interesting because that was not my plan at all. I flew my first mission was to Hubble in 1999, before yours.
You were the first pilot. I think some of our internet. Were you the first American to fly, or I know you were the first pilot? The first
No,
American
I was
and
the
the
first pilot and the first American in
Yeah.
our class to fly.
Yeah.
Julie Payette and Pedro Duque flew
Right.
for me from Canada and Spain. And then, yeah, so my plan was to fly another flight as a pilot and a couple flights as the commander of the space shuttle, because I was considered myself a test pilot and a shuttle pilot type. That was my plan. And then, you know, the space station wasn't being, I mean, I think the first piece had launched right in 98, but there was no people up there by the time I got back from that first mission in 99. And I thought, you know, I'll fly those 4 flights and then later I'll go and maybe do a long duration flight because that'll be a thing then. And as soon as I get back from my Hubble mission, I get a call and they say, hey, we want you to go and be the DOR in Russia, which is the director of operations in Star City. You're kind of like the mayor for the U.S. people in the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, and you negotiate some things with the Russians. You're kind of like the liaison between the Russian space program in Star City and the astronaut office or NASA. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to like go be a Capcom and then fly another shuttle mission as a pilot. And they're like, no, we want you to do this. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. So I went over there for like 9 months, did that. I come back. It's like around.
Did you ever figure out who you pissed off?
I don't know, but I come back and Charlie Precourt, I come home. This was before I had a cell phone. And it was like, I guess it was December of 2000. And it was right after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. I get home, we were out of town, and there's a message on our answering machine. I push it, and it's, hey, Scott, this is Charlie Precourt. Give me a call. And when you get those random calls from the chief of the astronaut office, depending on the timing, you might think, hey, this is a flight assignment, because the chief doesn't regularly call you unless it's something really, really good or really, really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't think I had done anything bad recently, so I thought it was something great. And he goes, yeah, hey, Scott, I want you to be the backup of Expedition 5, Peggy Whitson, but you're not going to fly as the prime after. You're just going to be the backup. And I was like, what?
That's a terrible deal.
Why? He goes, I go, why? Why do you want me to do that? You got all these people in the astronaut office. This is a job for
nobody else will do it. That's
he goes, no one else will do it. He goes, everyone else refused. And I'm like, and he goes, you got a little experience with Russian, and I need somebody now. And you have experience over there because you just got back. I need to start sending you back over there. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to fly as a pilot and then the commander twice, and then I'll think about it in 10 years. And he's like, well, what are you going to do? And I go, Charlie, well, I'm not going to, I'm a military guy. If this is an order, I'll take the order to do it. I gave him every reason why I thought I was the wrong person. And I go, but I can't tell you no. And he says to me, he goes, well, you're going to have to tell me yes.
Wow.
So go home and think about it. And I'm like, I don't think he put it exactly that way, but he goes, I'm going to need an answer of yes. I'm not going to need an answer of I won't tell you no. You have to agree to do this. So I go home, I talk to my wife at the time and the pros and cons. And, for me, it's always about, doing the hard stuff, even when you don't want to do it. Maybe give your management the reason why maybe you're not the best person. But if it comes down to it, you work for NASA and it's not just about you. It's about what the program needs. So eventually I said, okay, Charlie, I'll do that. And he says, okay, when you get back from that assignment, I'm going to assign you to command your next flight. I'm going to assign you your next space shuttle mission as the commander. So after only one flight as a pilot, which is rare. And then after that, I'll assign you to be commander of the International Space Station. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. And then I went off and did this really, really hard, almost thankless job of being the backup of someone when you're not going to fly next. It was interesting. She goes to Florida to launch, and I just sit at my desk and watch it, and Peggy's gone. And I was like, okay, I guess this is over. And I work, and then Charlie he leaves as the chief of the astronaut office. And I would think, okay, there goes that deal.
Oops.
But then the next chief, Steve Lindsay
Rommel.
Rommel called me and said, "Oh, we're going to sign you to STS 118." And in retrospect, it was really, even though I didn't do it for this reason, I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do for the organization. But in retrospect, it was really the better thing to do for me because it just gave me such a wider breadth of experience in the office. I mean, being able to fly as a pilot of a Hubble mission, commander of an ISS assembly flight, and then do 2 long duration flights, one at the time being the longest American flight ever, just gave me, much more broader experience than a lot of other people had, like including my brother. He flew 4 times, but all 4 of his flights were to the space station. So they're very similar. Whereas mine, each one of them were very, very much different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it shows you sometimes doing the stuff that you don't think is good for you.
Yeah.
Because it's too hard, might turn out to be the right thing.
There you go. That's the gem right there. Yeah, saying yes and doing what the right thing is.
I think on the whole, NASA leadership
right thing for you. Yeah.
They were pretty good about rewarding the people that took those, that did the things that nobody else wanted to do. So I think usually the karma works out in those cases, but not always,
Yeah, but I think you're right.
I remember my first week in training. It was January. I just gotten back from being the DOR. I've been there for 9 months. And then January, I'm back. I'm sitting in this classroom. It's freaking freezing. Middle of January, I'm in there by myself, and this guy's trying to teach me stuff about the Soyuz with these old posters and stuff. And he's I'm like, what the hell? And in Russia, it's crazy. At NASA, the way they teach you is this operational thing. You get some background information, but they're not teaching you how to build the space shuttle. That's someone else's job. Right? Giving you a little background information for understanding, but then they teach you how to how to operate the vehicle very well. I mean, space shuttle, most complicated aerospace vehicle ever built, probably will be the most challenging thing to fly ever because of automation, AI. Nothing will be harder than this, right? More complicated, probably.
It was a real pinnacle of human in the loop. I mean, we'll never do something like that again. Yeah.
Yes, but in Russia, this is completely different. I mean, if at NASA, if they were going to teach you to mail a package, they would say, okay, you get a box, you throw the stuff in it, you get some postage, you take it down to the post office, and you give it to them, and they send it. In Russia, they say they'll start in the woods. Okay, the part where we decide which tree to choose, cut it down, and then we're going to learn what to do next in box making 101.
I remember taking ham radio lessons over there. It was one of my least favorite things.
I refused.
You can refuse? I didn't know you could refuse
ham radio.
Wow, yeah. They're sitting in there teaching me how to build or design a Yagi antenna. Like I'm going to go up to the space station and design my own antenna and stick it on the outside or something, but not tell anybody. It was ridiculous.
And then it was funny too because there was the U.S. ham radio training. Remember that guy?
Yeah, we had to do both.
Yeah. Insane. Well, I didn't do that either.
Oh man.
And the ham radio guy's like, well, you can't use the ham radio. And he goes, and I go, that's fine. I don't want to use the ham radio. And he goes,
I know we had a phone. We had a phone up there. We can make phone calls. Why do we need a ham radio? Talk to some stranger. I can call people I know.
Yeah. He goes, well, what about in an emergency? I go, well, then I'll use the ham radio. And he goes, no, you won't. Well, you don't have a license. And I go, well, try to stop me.
You're call a cop.
You can get it when you come home, though. In an emergency, you have to do what you have to do. But when you get home, you get a ticket for operating the ham radio without a license.
Yeah,
And
right.
they'll never let you do it again without a license.
The FCC will come and put the cuffs on me.
That's right. That's a serious offense.
Yeah, Russia training was so much different. Like, at NASA it was about, hey, we made these mistakes in the simulator. What did we learn? What did we do good? What did we do bad? Sometimes if you don't do something bad, if you don't make mistakes, you could just be getting lucky. You don't really know if it's just random that you did everything well. So the idea, I think, at NASA was to stress the crew, force the mistakes, have us learn from them. Russia, it was completely different. Like our debriefs at the end of training, we used to have this big debrief, whether it was for Soyuz training or space station training, where the very last simulator, the final exam, you get out of the simulator, you go into this big conference room, and there'd be like 40 people standing around in there. And some of these people are like, retired cosmonauts, retired managers, old instructors that don't even work there anymore, maybe a secretary or two. And it was this, the only way I could describe it was blame smithing. Like the crew and the instructors, and sometimes even the management, are trying to figure out who's at fault. Who are we blaming for these mistakes? It wasn't about let's try to learn from them. It was about who's responsible for screwing up. And it always seemed to me that the person that was the highest skilled in this blame smithing was the one that won the debrief and won the day. It would madden them when they would say, "So Scott, you why'd you do this?" And I was like, "I don't know, I just screwed it up." Yeah, that was me. I did it.
Yeah.
And crazy, they have that position in mission control where there's a person sitting there with a pen and a paper counting every single mistake cosmonauts make. And after the flight, they have a reckoning and they deduct money from their contract based on mistakes they made, which is motivation for covering stuff up and not being honest. So I always told the cosmonauts, hey, if you screw something up and you're worried about getting docked your pay for it, just tell them I did it. Blame it on the American.
Which they did a lot.
Yeah, especially now, right? Man, those guys.
But it's a cultural thing. They have it's "Što dělat I kdo vinovat," right? Like, what are we going to do? And more importantly, who's to blame, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
And I think that's a big reason why, Russia is having such a hard time with their, illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine, because they have this within the government, at least. I don't know society as a whole, but especially, what I learned within their space program is, accepting responsibility was not always the priority, and I think their military has a similar thing where they tell their superiors what they want to hear, so they're not, blamed for screwing up. So their pay's not docked, maybe.
Yeah,
which is good now because, I want them to lose, and I want the Russians to lose big in this war.
I think it goes all the way to the top too. Like, I mean, Putin's never going to admit that he made a horrible blunder by getting him into this mess and take the blame. That's never going to happen, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So I think if we continue to support them, specifically the U.S. House of Representatives, I mean, they really need to get Ukraine some funding here very, very quickly.
Yeah. Speaking of Scott, I remember we both got into a little bit of trouble on the old Twitter when with the old head of Roscosmos. Remember that?
You got in trouble with him too?
I just jumped on your bandwagon, man.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. We didn't get in trouble with him. Well, he did block both of us.
Yeah.
But we also got a little slap on the wrist from NASA at the time, right? I mean,
I got a call from NASA.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
From Pam?
No, it was from Reed.
I got a call from Pam Melroy, the deputy administrator of NASA, former astronaut, and I was actually asleep. And I pick up my phone. It says Pam Melroy. This is like a couple days after I got into this pissing contest with the head of Roscosmos, and he basically, I don't know, I forget the details, but he basically said, because I was being so critical, back up. Roscosmos tweets this video of them leaving Mark Vande Hei behind on the International Space Station. The Russians, and this particular guy, the head of the organization, he's responsible for this guy's life. Mm-hmm. Bringing him up there and back. And he's suggesting he would maybe leave him behind. And I just got into such a heated argument with that guy. Eventually, I sent my medal back, my medal Garrett for space exploration. I sent it back to Russia. I said I didn't want it anymore. But then it was funny. One morning, Pam Melroy says, listen, I answer, I go, hey, Pam, I think I know why you're calling. And she laughed and she says, yeah. And she, it was a good conversation. She says, you have every right to say whatever you want. And I respect that. But understand, it can sometimes make our jobs harder. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I get it. Good. I still get into it Rogozin's no longer the head of Roscosmos, so
now he's cosplaying as a soldier. You see him down there. He's got all the NATO gear, walking around like he's some big general.
Yeah. He plays make-believe army man, and he actually got blown up. So I guess
he didn't get blown up.
I guess if you get yourself blown up, you're really.
He was having a birthday party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it was his party. Was it his party?
I think it was his party, and it was like he invited all the generals, and they were all talking about it on their phones, and they intercepted that, and they sent the HIMARS, right?
And yeah, I got into it again with him recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he reacts to me. It's the weirdest thing.
Wow.
He doesn't like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just him. Everyone else likes you, Scott. Don't worry. Just one guy.
Well, you're doing a great job, Scott. You raised a lot of money to supply ambulances to Ukraine, right?
Yeah. Now over I think total it's over like $3 million. And I was actually on a call the other day with President Zelensky and the rest of these United 24 ambassadors.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hamill, one of them that people would recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Timothy Snyder is a Yale professor, a bunch of other folks, and talking about just trying to keep the message out there. People get fatigued over something like this long term, but I think it's really one of the most important issues of our time right now, because not only is this a threat to a democratically democratic nation in Europe, developing democracy coming from the Eastern European former Soviet bloc, but still trying to do the right thing. And this is not only a threat to Ukraine, but it's a threat to the rest of Europe, which is the threat to democracies around the world. So this is a critical issue, and it just shocks me that people now, I see people online, people in Congress sometimes cozying up with Russia over this, saying that they would support Russia over Ukraine. It's crazy. So sad.
And you've been over there, right, Scott? Didn't you make at least a trip over there?
Yeah, I've been over there once already, right in the first year of the war, and got to go to President Zelensky's office. The whole trip, I went to Bucha and saw, where those genocide, those atrocities occurred, where people were buried, outside that church, where people were murdered, went to hospitals and saw kids that were injured in the shelling. I say it was the fifth most meaningful trip of my life, and that's only because I've flown in space 4 times.
Mm-hmm. Most meaningful trip on planet Earth.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but we need to continue to support them as best we can.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys, by the way, changing subjects, did you see my new TV show?
No, what is this? What's going on?
The one on Apple TV. Yeah. What's it's the one where she comes back.
Constellation.
Constellation.
minute.
That's it. Thank you.
Start from the beginning on this one. This is
In
good.
it.
But the girl from the dragon tattoo.
Yeah, Numi Rapace. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's great.
I heard it's awesome.
It's I think it's awesome. I'm a little biased on the space stuff because I was the consultant. Thank you for your help on that, Garrett. I got some advice from Garrett, having, he has experience in that with For All Mankind, but I was the astronaut technical consultant for the space stuff. And, I think the job they did with the space station and how well the astronaut or the actors portrayed astronauts in space was pretty well done. But it also stars Jonathan Banks, which is really cool. He was the guy in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
It's a great show. Science fiction, but also has a lot of reality of what it would be like to live aboard the space station.
I actually saw an article in the media where you're talking about working on that show, and you gave me that shout out about that conversation we had. So that was nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, hopefully other astronauts that do this will then talk to, because I got a lot of good advice from you about the three. Okay, you got the three levels of, hey, you have to fix this because this is stupid. This doesn't make any sense. Like if someone was crying in space and you see a tear going down their face, right?
Yeah.
That would be a must fix. And then there's the things you should fix. And then there are things that don't really, fix them if you can, but if you don't, it's so kind of okay,
Yep.
That's kind of how I looked at it, and it seemed to have worked well. I think we're maybe even looking at.
Yeah, I got a clip right there.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate looking set.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, the space station that they built in Berlin was amazing. It was better than much realistic than Building 9 at the Johnson Space Center. Built for a different reason. I mean, Building 9 isn't built to look exactly like the space station. It's built for more. It's just built for training and functionality. So it makes sense to be the way it is. But the space station they built was incredible.
It's amazing what they can do.
Yeah.
In the Hollywood game. And so, did you go over to Germany to do that, or
yeah,
how did that work?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Zoom calls, but I also made 2 trips over there for a couple week or two each. And had astronaut training with the crew members about how do you behave, how do you float, how do you talk on the radio, which is a big
the one thing I keep telling them whenever we do that for All Mankind is don't just start moving in slow motion. We don't move in slow motion, we move in real time. They also I'm in space. That's mistake number 1.
Yeah. But you do move but when you see people come, it's funny, when you're on a shuttle mission, right? And you fly around, especially a shuttle that docks to the space station, right? Remember people would fly in like Superman, and then they kind of spend their time floating around the space station like alligators all day, where the people that have been there for a long time are more upright, like Homo erectus, right? And it was weird. You're in different attitudes mostly. They're moving around like this, and you're moving around like this. Kind of an interesting.
When you see the shuttle guys, when they first come up there, that haven't been up there for a while, they're like a bull in a china shop. They would always they would launch, and they'd be careful. But if they're going from point A to point B, they would take off, and they'd be careful about that. But they wouldn't think about where they're going to stop. They wouldn't plan their landings, and so then they would get there, and they'd oh, I can't grab this cable, and then next thing you know, they're out of control, and they're knocking into walls, and it's pretty humorous actually.
Where towards the after you've been there a long time, certainly, I got to the point where I would just kind of move around, just with my big toe on my right foot is actually how I would propel myself, just with that subtle small amount of force. And I'm looking for a picture of my toe. I want to show it.
I'm just thinking about what kind of an amazing astronaut Daniel Day-Lewis would make.
I was watching There Will Be Blood on the plane 2 days ago, and that guy's an amazing actor. I saw he just agreed. He hasn't done a movie in 10 years, but he's agreed to do a movie with Christopher Nolan. I don't know what it's about, but here's what here's what your big toe looks like after a year, and this was on
Oh
the
my
space
goodness.
station towards
Oh,
the end.
Oh, is
And
that just from wearing against the foot restraint? Is that what that is?
yeah, you're just propelling yourself with
Wow.
my
wow.
right toe.
Huh.
That was how I
Wow.
moved around.
Oh man, that's creepy. But maybe you should have used some more toes.
Yeah, maybe try the other toe for a while.
Apparently, I'm right-toed.
Wow, that's interesting.
Let me ask you guys this. Scott, with all that time up there, it's like, I was only up for 2 weeks at a time, and I felt, I knew I could get around much better on the last day than the first day after 2 weeks. But from what I've heard is, of course, as you go along, you feel more and more at ease. Was there like a time? Was it like a month or a couple months, or was there something where you felt like I live here, or something switched? Did that happen at all?
Let me let Garrett answer that first, and I'll follow
Okay.
up because I'm curious what he thinks.
I think it was for me. I think it was like about a month. Because until you get to a month, it's still weird, and it's still like surreal that you're in this microgravity environment and you're not really that adept at living in it. And after about a month, it becomes normal. And that might sound anticlimactic, but for me, actually, I thought that was wonderful because once you fully adapt and get used to it, it's like I described it as like it's like you can go to Paris for like 2 days and you could run around and see the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and everything and Notre Dame, or I guess not anymore, but anyway, you used to be able to. And then that's one way to do it, right? And then you could go and spend like a whole summer there, or even several months, and you get to know where like your favorite cafe is and who makes the best baguette, and you really soak it in and become a Parisian, and I think that's kind of the difference. Is it the same for you, Scott? Or
Yeah, I would say a month is definitely a big milestone where your space foggy brain kind of goes away at around that time, and your ability to like think like you were able to think and operate when you were on Earth. That's when that kind of transition happens for me. It was about a month point. Then I think there's another one where about the 3 month point you're really pretty comfortable, but then you continue to evolve the whole time, but more slowly. But towards the end, I mean, I was able to like move around with just my big toe and be able to just push off with your toe under a handrail and like, grab onto a handrail that might be behind me and, over my head, kind of walk around the space station with your feet. But you never, at least I never have felt completely normal. I've had other astronauts tell me that have been up there for less time that they felt exactly the same as they did on Earth, which I never did, right? I don't see how you could, but I've had people tell, oh, I didn't feel any different than I was on Earth. I always felt like my head was swollen, my sinuses were congested, the CO2 was high when I was there a lot of times. I think it's gotten better now. So yeah, my eyes would burn from the CO2 sometimes. My vision was affected always on my space flights in different ways. So yeah, I never felt normal like I did on Earth.
how effective were all the countermeasures like the ARED and all that at keeping you healthy when you got back? If you don't mind divulging some private medical data, like what percent of your bone density were you down? And
I lost some. Fortunately for me, I started with more than average. I guess I'm thick-skulled, maybe. I don't know. But
probably why you didn't listen to your dad when he was trying to give you advice.
yeah, right. I lost 25% of my heart mass.
Whoa.
Yeah.
25%?
Sounds like a lot.
That doesn't sound good.
Like a quarter. Last time I checked. Like Garrett's quarter year in space.
Yeah.
My
Did
wife
they come
says-
back? Did you get that 25% back?
It was funny. We were in the Oval Office, and after my flight, my brother was there. We were visiting with President Obama, and my brother says to President Obama, he goes, "Yeah, my brother lost 25% of his heart mass." And Amiko, my wife, now she immediately responds. She goes, "Good thing he started with a big heart."
Oh man, that's great.
And then President Obama goes, "She's a keeper." But
Get on, Miko.
yeah, there was that bone loss, muscle loss. I think the worst thing for me though, the most disturbing thing was the swelling I would get in my legs when I would stand up, like for the first couple of weeks. I mean, I would watch my legs go like this. My ankles just swell up, like go from like this to like this within like a couple of minutes. And that was probably the hardest thing. But I would say probably 6 to 8 months before I felt completely back to normal.
Wow. I did see something very similar with those passengers on the cruise ship at the buffet.
Yeah. They're ready for that.
Yeah. A similar effect.
Yeah. The exercise helps. I mean, without the exercise, I mean, you'd be a mess when you got back.
That 25% loss in the heart, were you able to get that back, Scott, after a while?
It all came back. Yeah. But it makes sense, right? Because our hearts and the rest of us were designed and evolved in gravity, and our heart's supposed to be pushing against gravity, and that exercises the muscle on every beat. And when you get to space, it no longer has to force as much blood with as much force to your brain. So it makes sense that even though you're exercising, that it would get deconditioned.
Yeah,
it's a surprise at the amount.
Yeah, I thought the deconditioning you would have done would have kept it closer to where it was. But that's interesting.
Speaking of medical things, I have a question for you two guys, because I have this astronaut milestone, at least EVA astronaut milestone coming up, that some guys that have done spacewalks have to unfortunately experience. But I got shoulder surgery coming up.
Oh,
have you guys had any?
Yeah, I managed to escape that. I haven't had any shoulder issues, but almost everybody does. I mean, it's extremely common, right?
Yeah. My left shoulder is a mess. I mean, I have a severed ligament that's like retracted.
Ooh.
And the doctor's like, hopefully I can loosen things up in here and get it reattached.
Yeah. No, I have tears in both. My right shoulder, I'm righty, but my right shoulder was a tear that he thought I could get away with. I didn't have to get repaired. And just did, a lot of exercise rehab. The left shoulder though was a pretty good tear that Dr. Lowe back in Houston repaired. But both of them now pretty much aren't very good. But It's not the same. I'm like, because like I tried throwing a pitch out at a Yankee. I did throw a pitch out at a Yankee game in 2019, and I hadn't thrown a baseball, I guess, in a while. And it was like lifting a cinder block above my head. It was like, oh man, just to get above my shoulder. I was like, geez, something's wrong here. And so I think, it's all the wear and tear. It was mainly NBL wear and tear, I think.
Yeah.
And with the Hubble flights, and we used to do like back-to-back days. And then they changed those rules where we stopped doing that, and that probably just made it worse. But at this point, I'm like, well, it doesn't really restrict anything that I'm doing. So I do whatever I can to try to keep them loose and exercise with them. But it was, when we're training for spacewalk, you need to be able to. Right now, I think I'd probably get them both repaired if I was still at NASA.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's worth it.
You can get them repaired now.
Yeah. Oh, is that right?
That Treat Astronaut Act will cover that surgery.
I don't think I know about that act. Is that
I was talking to my brother yesterday about my upcoming shoulder surgery, and he goes, well, you should look into the new legislation, this Treat Astronaut legislation that will cover this. So like for mine, my military retired TRICARE will pay for part of it, but stuff that isn't covered, like all the out-of-pocket stuff, will be paid by NASA.
That's interesting. Well, that's a very helpful hint right there. I didn't know that.
I'll send you the legislation.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, because I've heard rumors about that, but I never really. Yeah. I thought it got voted down a lot and didn't get through. But all right, that's good news.
Yeah. Any advice though on the recovery?
The recovery of it.
Yeah.
You should talk to your guy. But basically, it was like I remember it was 1 month. It was like 3 months. Like 1 month doing nothing with the arm, kind of having it in one of those slings. And mine was a torn labrum. So it was like 1 month of healing and then another month of getting your working every day to get your range of motion back. And then another month of building the strength up. So it was a 3 month rehab. But after that, I tell you what, after those 3 months, it was like a new shoulder. It was stronger than ever. Like, I remember being constrained lifting weights and stuff because it would hurt so much. But after that 3 month, it was like it was brand new.
Okay.
So, yep.
I'm not looking forward to it.
Just get a good guy.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a good guy doing it.
Thanks.
That treat astronaut, does that covers like all kinds of medical issues?
For me, it's a little bit different being retired military, but for you guys, I think it's more comprehensive, actually. So I'll send it to you.
How comprehensive? Would it cover like hair transplant? You think we...
I think if you could make the case that your hair fell out as a result of your space flight, absolutely.
You saw the picture of me when I started.
Absolutely. Show them the before and after.
I
think it was space flight that made me bald.
Absolutely. My hair was in white when I went to space. I had no salt and pepper. I went dark and boom.
Yeah.
A week later.
You went right from pepper to salt.
Right, exactly. Not even salt. Complete white. It's not even gray. It's like when you need those eclipse glasses to look at my head.
Hey, at least you can color that stuff. You know what you can't color?
Yeah, that's what I
Can't
agree
color
with
that.
you.
That's
That's
right.
what I've been trying to do is just keep it on my head. I'll be happy.
Yeah, you're complaining to the wrong crowd here, Mass.
Yeah, no, I never. Anyway, but you guys look good. There you go. Before
Oh,
and
yeah,
after.
There we go again. Yeah.
That's the proof right there. No medical science. How are we doing on time here, Dallas? We good? What do we got?
I was going to jump in. We got another 13 minutes in the show, but we have come up on 45 minutes for this air quotes episode. Whatever y'all want to do. I mean,
I was just going to say for Scott, we touched some of the stuff you're doing now. But it's been since you. I mean, we talked about the stuff you did in space and some of the things you've done more recently after. What else have you been up to? I mean, you left the office. How long was it? 8 years ago?
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
And you've written a bunch of books, and you've got this TV show, and you've been all kinds. Tell us some of the things you've been doing since, and what you're up to now.
So my main job where for paying the bills is doing public speaking, motivational speaking. Been trying to come up with a new talk. My old talk was great, but I've been doing it for so long. My agent's like, hey, this is kind of like old story. You got anything new? What do you got? What do you got new for me? I need something new. I'm like, I think maybe I need a new agent. That's what I need.
Alert there, Mr. Agent.
I've used all my best stories, and you want me to come up with new stories that aren't the best stories. So I've been working on that. I'm working on that for like a year. But always trying to, write some ideas for maybe another book. I do some consulting, a little bit of company board stuff. I was on the board of a few SPACs, which are no longer as big of a thing as they once were. I've recently got on board this company called Urban Sky that have these balloons that fly in an area of our atmosphere where is not, above 70,000 feet, that can put payloads on these balloons for, things like urban planning. There's all kinds of applications for this environment. Young new company, so that's exciting. Trying to help them out, but always looking for other opportunities to do things. My brother calls me every once in a while. He says, "Hey, what'd you do today?" It's like I swam a mile and walked a dog. He goes, "You should get a job."
Why?
Why? I like swimming and walking the dog. Because you need a job. I'm like, no, I don't.
Especially in your neighborhood, you got that beautiful location there, right, with all the red rocks right around your house. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking before we started taping about how if I were you, I would never leave the house. It's just beautiful there.
It's a danger. So yeah, I'm busy. I enjoyed it. There's a possibility I might look for some other stuff to do at some point if the right thing came along. But so far.
What about the flying? I get asked this a lot. Flying in space again. I'm sure you guys get asked that too. Is that something you'd like to go back and do? You think at some point, either of you guys?
So if someone said, "Hey, we have a," well, obviously we're not going to go back and fly for NASA, right? Because that seems historically to be not to be a revolving door, right?
Except for John Glenn.
Oh yeah, one guy did it.
Yeah, one guy.
Might be another guy that I could see pulling something off that himself like that someday, maybe.
Who's that? Mario Ronco?
No, some other U.S. senator. Former
Oh, I need to go back.
Oh, I see.
We need more twins data.
Yeah.
I jest, but you never know.
Yeah.
But would I want to work for Axiom if I had to do the day job, the training? Would I do that to fly to the space station? Probably not. I have a wealthy friend that was kind of interested, and if he was to do it, I had talked to Axiom that I could fly with him as like the commander of the crew, but he's really not interested. I think he's too scared, actually. But if someone came along and said, "Hey, I got a private mission to the moon," and it made sense, I would consider that. Absolutely. How about you, Garrett?
Yeah. Given an opportunity, people ask me a lot. Is that why I went to SpaceX to get a chance to fly again? And I'm like, no, because I had a chance to fly again if I stayed at NASA. I could have flown on the Soyuz. I was ready to get back in line. I went to SpaceX for other reasons, but if somebody came to me with the opportunity to do it, and if I can make a difference by doing it and help people out, then I would be happy to do that again. It's great flying in space, but yeah, I mean, it would have to, we both have a pretty good. I don't have a bunch of red rocks at my window or anything, but I got a pretty good setup too, and given all that up to do it permanently would be something I probably wouldn't do, but for the right opportunity, yeah, absolutely.
Remember when you called me and asked me to come work for SpaceX, and I'd really considered it. Remember that?
Yeah. That's when I was. Yeah.
And the reason I didn't was I thought, because I wanted to fly in space one more time, and I thought it was much more likely if I stayed at NASA. And good thing I did, because the opportunity I had really opened up a lot of opportunities after NASA. That had I gone to SpaceX, maybe I would have had more or less, but you don't really know for sure. It could have not been the same. So I think I made the right choice. But thanks for reaching out to me and at least giving me an option.
Well, that's when we were first standing up to director of space operations, which I eventually ended up taking that job. But at first I was like, we probably should find somebody qualified. And that's why I reached out to you. And but then nobody took it. So I said, okay, I'll do it.
How about you?
I think I was going to say, go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, how about you, Mass? Would you fly again?
It's an interesting question. The easy answer is I'll go. But I think there'd have to be a real reason where I felt like it was me that needed to go, and for personal reasons, I think it'd be really cool. But as both of you have said, I'm pretty happy with what's going on, where I am on planet Earth. If there was another mission, like they needed someone to go back to Hubble and I was the right guy, I certainly would absolutely do that. But I really can't imagine anything like that. Unlike you guys, I don't have the space station experience. So I think there's going to be, more of a need for that as we're moving forward with space stations. I think when I really think about it, it would have to be because I felt like I was doing something. There was something special as far as outreach goes, or because doing that, to do it right and to really make a difference takes a lot of time in the preparation and training for that, as we all know. And I don't know if that kind of opportunity would ever surface, but if it did, I certainly would want to go. I think I'm hanging around the planet.
Pretty good planet.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should start wrapping up. We should you should get the book.
There you go, man.
Like that?
Yeah. Hey, I got another book here.
Excellent.
There you go.
Hey, and I put some of these links in chat as well. Folks, if you haven't checked out Scott
Look
Kelly's
at that.
book, and there's Moonshot.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Begs the question, Garrett. Begs the question, where is your book?
Yeah, where's your book,
it's
man?
right over. It's right over here. I don't know if you can see it's right there. And it's very heavy. I would pull it off the shelf, but I don't want to injure my shoulder.
It's never too late to write a book.
I put those links in
Right.
chat, the children's book and the endurance book. If anybody that's watching the show, or go down to the descriptions, we'll put a place. Like, I can promote the books. Y'all don't have to. I'll tell them to click on the link and stuff. Make it so Scott can keep swimming and walking the dog.
Scott's got a lot of books.
You
How
know?
many have you got, Scott? How many did you write?
2 kids books and a graduation book, a picture book, and endurance. So what is that? 5?
I count 5 there, yeah.
I didn't get all those set to show on the
But
screen. Sorry.
only 2 of them were New York Times bestsellers.
Oh,
That's enough. You really only need 1.
You get the title.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, you don't need to win 2 Academy Awards. One.
No, you're an Academy
One.
Award
Academy
winner.
Award
With
winner.
1 or 2. Yeah.
If you win
Sounds
2, you know
good.
what you are? You're an Academy Award winner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Hey, Mike and Garrett, I also sent y'all in the chat the link to that Treat Astronauts Act so you can get
Thank
your
you.
shoulders checked out.
Oh, yeah. I
Thanks.
guess we get my hair transplant, too. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's
I'll
pull
be
it all in.
looking for that.
Just link them to the show, like where we got your picture from the astronaut class. Just link them right there to the show and see like Exhibit 1. Label it at the top.
Yeah.
Scott, if Apple TV comes after me for promoting the show, I showed that little clip from the show. I might need you to like make a phone call for me if that's cool.
Yeah, I think I can take care of it.
Okay,
No
cool.
problem.
Good deal. Do y'all have like an outro y'all want to do? We haven't done this before, so do you say like "see us next time" or anything, or how do y'all usually end the show here?
Yeah. See us next time. Like and subscribe. Is that
Thanks
what
for
we-
listening. Thanks for liking. Main thing was like. You don't have just like it.
No. Subscribe or whatever.
Subscribe.
Just-
What was it? What we want people to do?
you don't have to
Subscribe.
watch it. You don't
You
have
don't
to watch it.
Right. You don't have to watch it. Just subscribe.
Hit the
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
Ring the bell. Hey, again, there's the website, twofunnyastronauts.com.
Yeah.
Has sort of the podcast, and these episodes will be there on the podcast. You might be listening to it there now, and the YouTube channel as well. We get these up on your YouTube channel too, guys.
Awesome.
And
But mainly
on YouTube, it'll go out to like all the Google, Apple Podcasts, all the usual places, Spotify, whatnot. It's all out there.
we mainly want to thank Scott for being with us.
Yes.
He's got so much experience in space and such a good storyteller. And I think we only scratched the surface, but we got a lot of good stories out of you today, Scott. So thanks so much. It's great. It's one of the great things I think about being a former astronaut is we get to do stuff like this, and just talk about remember some of the fun times and learn about each other. And so really appreciate you coming on with Garrett and I today. Thank you.
And we don't have to worry about the chief of the astronaut calling us up after and saying, "Hey,
That's right. Yeah.
hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I'd be happy to come on again sometime, not in the near future, but maybe
In about another week?
no. But
Thanks. Well, maybe I'll see you in New York next weekend.
I will. We'll be at the
Great.
same event.
Awesome. Yeah, looking
All
forward to that.
See you guys.
All right,
Okay,
buddy.
guys. Thanks, everybody.
All
Thanks,
right.
Scott.
Thanks, Stas, John, Garrett, Scott.
Anytime.
Will you let us know when we're out?
Oh, you're not out yet. We're still
Okay.
live. I'll let you know in a second.
All
Time
What
out.
do you want to say?
Time out with all the other content. Yeah, we don't want to broadcast what you're going to say.
Exactly.
Hey, folks, if you're watching on our channel here, thanks for watching today. We'll snip this off at the end. But new thing, let us know if you liked it or not. I thought it was really cool. I'm sitting over here snickering. I had to mute my mic, so I'd be snickering on y'all's podcast. But maybe there's some DOS snickers in there. But that's going to be the end of the live taping, live recording, whatever, today. And we will see y'all next time. Leave us some feedback down in the comments or whatever, and let us know. Should we do more of these? I think we're planning on doing more. But thanks for watching, y'all. We'll see you nerds later.
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RA-68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange! 145!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. What do you think? Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
we rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?